Okay, I think we are live. Welcome everyone. Let me just get the painting cam set up real quick. I don't think we have anyone in chat yet, but that's okay. And I need to get my Wi-Fi on. Okay, it appears to be upside down. Let's see what we can do about that. Nope, still upside down. All right, hopefully that camera angle will work. Let's get a little closer. So, what's up everyone? Today I'm going to be doing a long stream. Going to be going till maybe 6 p.m. or until I pass out or my equipment fails, whichever comes first basically. Let me get the charging cable so that my phone doesn't die. I'm using my phone as the webcam right now. I don't like the position that that phone is at. I wonder if I can flip this. Let me see. Sorry for the technical difficulties here. I'd much prefer the phone to be mounted like this. But now we need to flip it around in OBS. Transform, rotate 180. There we go. Okay, now we got that sorted out. So today I'm going to be figuring out what my preferred army painting method is, and we're going to be using these 5 Dire Avengers as our guinea pigs. I know in the poll in the Discord people had preferred the Swooping Hawks, but they are not built yet. So maybe tomorrow if we make good progress on the Dire Avengers. So we're going to start things off by doing a little bit of airbrushing just to prep the models. And to do that, we're going to need my very high-tech spray booth made out of this cardboard box. So we're going to be doing something interesting today, in that each of these models, I'm going to paint them using a different method so that we can get a side-by-side comparison of how quick each of these different methods that I'm going to be using is. And really quick, I need to send out a link for the live stream. So just bear with me for a second. Okay. All right, let's get back to it. So, let's get to prepping these models. So, for the first one, I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to kind of try and do the classic method of just base coat, wash, highlight, you know, kind of the standard way that Games Workshop recommends that you do things. We've all come to know and love. Then I'm going to try another one that's a little bit more dry, one that's going to be very dry brush heavy, where I'm going to basically try and paint the whole thing using dry brush stippling. The next one I'm going to do airbrush heavy, where I try and get as much definition as I can just using the airbrush. The next one after that, we're going to try and do what they call air chop, which is just slap chop, but you use the airbrush to speed up the underpainting section of it. And we will see where we are after all that. For the fifth one, I'll probably leave that for the Exarch. Oh, I'm quiet, huh? All right. Let me see if I can move my mic closer. That should help. And yeah, like I was saying, for the Exarch, hopefully by that time we'll have enough experience that maybe I can come up with a hybrid method to really get the speed and quality that I want. Now the question is, where did I put my flow improver? Okay, airbrush flow improver. So in terms of the color scheme on these guys, I'm going to be doing mostly kind of the classic Dire Avengers blue, but I am going to have the helmets and the shoulder pads be kind of like a shiny white, and that's to help them integrate with the rest of the army, where most of the Wraithbone armor is going to be in kind of a glossy looking white, or at least that's what I'm aiming for. Because all this was actually done for a commission client, and what they tasked me with doing is figuring out how to translate high elves from Warhammer Fantasy to Warhammer. And this is kind of what I'm coming up with where, you know, high elves tend to have silver, like a bright silver armor with a lot of gold trim. I didn't think that silver would quite work on Eldar, so I went for like a shiny white, trying to emulate almost like a white ceramic as sort of a midway point there. And so yeah, we're gonna make the helmets and the shoulder pads that white with maybe some nice gold trim and some big red gemstones. So let's get going here. So I think we'll start out with our blues. I'm going to be using this Vallejo Royal Blue. It's really saturated. I love it. Only putting a little drop in here because this one's mainly just going to be for the first one, the classic base coat wash method. The other ones will probably start them out a little bit darker. Some flow improver, a couple drops in there, and a little bit of water. Pretty well. Now let's make sure that it's actually coming out. Would help if I turn the damn thing on. I'm not getting anything. Oh, there we go. There we go. Perfect. I may have over-thinned that blue just a little bit, but that's all right. pretty wet here, but that is because, like I said, I think I over-thinned this blue just a little bit. So I want to make sure that I'm getting some very full coverage, and I'm not really worried about clogging any details or anything just because of how thin it is. Now for the next one, this one I'm going to do, actually for the next two I think that we can pretty much start from the same base color. I'm going to darken it down a good bit using this Imperial Blue, and then I'll probably add some Payne's Gray to it as well. Now the reason that I went so much brighter on the base coat for the first one is because, you know, in the base coat wash highlight method, it's going to get darkened down quite significantly when I apply that wash. So I wanted to start much more vibrant up front to try and preserve some of that color through that process. Now I actually sent a link to this stream to the client that hired me to paint these guys, so he may pop into the chat at some point. We can get some direct feedback from them on my choices. Get a little more flow improver, maybe not quite as much as last time. A little more water. Actually, I'm going to add just a drop of this green in here, this dark yellow green, because it's a color that I've been using in other parts of the paint jobs as a element of the shadow color. Because when I base these guys, I want to do it in kind of a forest environment, and so I want to have a little bit of that green reflecting through. Let's test the flow here. Still looking quite bright. Need a moment for it to darken down. There we go. That's better. Alright. Let's get these two guys. We're going to be very generous with these base coats here. So I think that the consistency of the paint coming out in this batch is definitely a little bit better than the first one. Let's try and be really quick with this. Let's put this guy on full blast. Speed really is the name of the game today. I have about something more of these guys left to go, so I need to really figure out a way to start knocking them out. And actually, for the more like slap choppy one, I'm also going to give it that same base coat, but I'm going to do it a little bit lighter so it remains a little bit dark. I just want to get a little bit more color into the shadows. I really don't like doing just like black and white. I find that adding a little bit of color into the shadows when you're doing something like slap chop goes a long way to giving it a little bit of extra character. Okay, that should be good. And we will leave the Exarch alone for now because, well, I haven't figured out how I'm going to paint him yet, so he'll go off to the side. Now let's clean out this airbrush. The biggest challenge to making airbrushing actually efficient is being able to change your colors quickly. I have just a big giant pot of water next to me that I'm currently dunking it in, trying to get it clean. So airbrushes, yeah, I feel they're really not super efficient unless you're painting a really large model or painting a large number of models, but that does fit our use case today, so. Blue on this guy's looking pretty good. Might do a little touch up with the hand brushing when we get to him, but otherwise I'll put him to the side. Next one, this is the one where I'm going to be doing as much of the shading with the airbrush as I can. So let's go back up to that very vibrant royal blue. Now I definitely don't want this to be too thinned down, too watery. I might add another drop of paint in there because it's looking pretty thin. And that's just for the sake of control. If it comes out just a little bit thicker, I'll have more control over where it ends up on the model, and that's going to be important for this. And I think I might dial back the flow just a little bit as well using this back screw, so I'll tighten it just a bit. So are any of you watching here working on something as well? Oh my God, I'm getting a call from my mom. Hold on. I gotta mute myself for a second. Sorry about that. My mom just called with a bunch of scheduling issues, but alright, back to painting. So for this guy, yeah, I want to try and get some strong highlights using the airbrush. So I'm going to try and stay very angled with this, coming in from above. I'm trying to be pretty conservative about the amount of paint that's coming out, because I don't want to accidentally fill in my shadow colors. And so we're going to focus really just on some key visible areas. So we got some decent definition. I don't know if you can see it that well, if this light is sort of washing it out or not, but we're getting some decent definition by doing it this way. I got a little bit too much on that arm right there. This is unfortunately not the most high-end and like precise airbrush, which I think hampers me for this particular method a little bit. It would be better if I could like constrain the nozzle a little for so I'm not hitting as much area with each blast, but gotta work with what I got. Okay, that's looking decent. Now for this one, we're going to leave him because we want to build up with our dry brush. And then for the next one, we shall move on to a nice off-white color to use as our slap chop highlight. I think an advantage of the sort of slap choppy method that I'm going to be trying out here is that because the helmet and the shoulders are going to be white, that's going to do a little bit of work for us. In fact, I probably should have hit the shoulder pads and the helmet with a little bit of like an undercoat base color, a little bit more color. I might do that real quick using a regular brush. Yeah, cleaning out the airbrush is really the challenge here. Open it up. Get all that out. There we go. Now we're just blowing air. So now I'm going to go in with this Vallejo Off-White. Let's do that real quick base coat first, actually. Got a little bit of that gray, and again with that green shadow color. It's a very strong green, so I don't want to use too much of it. That should be an appropriate amount. Especially when it comes to airbrushing white over things, it does actually help quite a bit to have a strong undertone. Don't have to worry about being too neat here. I'm also not worrying about getting perfect coverage, because this is meant to just be an undertone. It's mostly going to get covered over, so. Now let's see if I can erase those mistakes a little bit with some water before the paint sets up. Alright, let's let that dry just a moment. Get our off-white going here. I like this off-white a lot. It's very creamy, very bright. Makes a great highlight color to like mix with other colors, because it's got just a little bit of those warm tones in there. It really prevents you from, you know, accidentally desaturating things too much. In fact, I'll probably be using this color to mix in with some more of that royal blue to give one final coat. To the airbrush heavy version of these guys. That way we can get just a little bit more highlighting done. I just have to be mindful not to get too close, or else the air is going to start splatter here. That's always a danger when you have very wet paint. Let's see if I can maybe wipe off the nozzle a little bit. Okay. Still waiting on that base coat to dry just a bit. So. You know, we can start on other parts of the model while that's drying. Now I want to be very, very angled here, because I really don't want that white getting into places that I don't intend. And quite a lot of speckling, which I don't love. So something that I have discovered through a bit of trial and error is, yeah, when you're airbrushing, you really got to try and maximize the contrasts. It's not super worth it to do a bunch of like gradual layering, because then all this shading that we're creating right here, it accidentally kind of just gets filled in. Way better to do like a huge step up. We're getting quite a lot of contrast like this. I'm liking how that's turning out. Lots of shading. Really not super happy about the amount of like speckling that I'm getting, but I'm not entirely sure how to avoid that. Airbrushing is a little bit of a newfangled technology to me. I've always been sort of a hand brush purist. A couple more very bright highlights. That's looking pretty good. And I think our final thing that we'll be doing with the airbrush is just hopefully getting a couple more highlights on the second guy over there. I wonder if maybe I over-thinned that white a little bit, and that's why we were getting so much speckling. So I've mixed a little bit more of that royal blue in there. Let me see if I can find that other blue paint that I've been using. Yeah, I'm also going to mix in a little bit of this pastel blue. improver. 1 drop of water. Still coming out kind of white. We've gotten... There we go. Now our blues are coming out. That's what we're looking for. Yep, going to be very gentle. So that has really sort of this is one of the problems that I have with airbrushing. When I try and do something like this, it doesn't really work. We've now just kind of dulled our color out quite a bit. Like, yeah, there's shape definition, but man, did we lose vibrancy. It's reading as much too light of blue for what I was going for. So what will probably end up happening with this guy is, I don't even know. Might have to go over him with like a blue contrast paint or something. Because, yeah, that's not it. That's not it. I think last ditch effort to save this guy. I'm gonna put some more royal blue in here. We're going to thin it down a lot and just spray it over them, and hopefully that will preserve some of the gradients and highlighting that we just did, while also bringing back some vibrance. That guy really thin. Actually, I'm going to go one step further here, and I'm going to put a little contrast medium in there. Thin it down even further, maybe make it flowy a little bit. Having a hard time opening it though. Drops of that. try coming in from underneath. This. Let's see if we can bring back just a touch of that vibrancy. Yeah, it helped a little bit, but it also sort of made our undershading go away. That's definitely going to need like a coat of a contrast paint or something. I don't think that's really salvageable. So I'm probably going to avoid... yeah, I'm probably going to avoid that method. I wonder if I could have gotten that method to work if I had started from not such a dark base coat, maybe something with a little bit more vibrance, and then really just pumped up the contrast up to a very light blue like this, and then had something more like this as the undertones. Maybe that would have worked. Might experiment with that a little bit in the future. Excuse me for 1 second as I go and properly clean the airbrush, because I'm pretty much done with it for today. I will be back. Okay, I'm back, and let's go ahead, get rid of the booth. I think we're done with the airbrush for the time being. So I'm going to start off with this guy, the one that I plan to do the dry brushing on. So let me get out some of my brushes here. I'm just using makeup brushes. I do have a fancy Artis Opus dry brush set that I won at a little local painting competition, but I don't want to touch that one yet. I'm trying to get Artis Opus to sponsor the channel. And I did talk to them about maybe getting some brushes for my painting classes at Gen Con, but they haven't quite worked out that deal with me yet. Might have to press them on it. So I'm actually going to set up my wet palette. It may sound strange, but I find one of the better ways to do dry brushing is to put the paint on the wet palette. So that way every time you re-up on the paint on the brush, you're also hydrating it. So that way you don't get that chalky texture. Okay. That is that. So I'm going to go straight from this dark base coat color that we did here right up into our royal blue immediately. And I'm hoping that through the dry brushing that we're going to be able to build up color really rather quickly. I'm going to start out by doing kind of a stipple coat, and then with the highlight color I'll do some more traditional high brushing and hopefully pick up enough of the raised edges that it's going to minimize the amount of edge highlighting that I have to do later on, since that can be really time consuming. Maybe a little bit too much water on the brush. Yeah, I think that that's a pretty good consistency there. see how it applies. Pretty good. I think it was Ninjon who did a video recently saying that, you know, you've been lied to about airbrushing, about it being the best method for fast painting and stuff like that. And he says that he very much favors dry brushing because it's so much better at picking out raised edges and stuff like that. And you know what? He might be right about that. We'll see if we can prove that point today. It is going quite quickly, I must say, and I'm liking how it looks so far. If you thin down the paint just a little bit on your dry brush, you can get some nice smooth gradients, I have to say. Now the whole purpose of these experiments, well, A, it's to find speed, but it's also to find quality as well. I want a good balance of both. I don't want to have to just rely too much on using things like washes or contrast paints or anything, because honestly I don't love the way those things look. So if we could find another way to quickly build up color transitions, give a little bit of depth, that would really be ideal. So that's what I'm looking for today. What's going to give me the best depth of color, the best definition, the quickest. I think that this is pretty analogous, what I'm doing right now, to the like sponging method that's been going around YouTube lately. In fact, when I originally pitched the sponsorship idea with Artis Opus, I told them what I would do is I would take that big dry brush set that I had won and do a video pitting their dry brushes and doing a method very similar to this up against that sponging method and see who does the best. And at the moment I am really liking this sort of wet dry brushing. Smaller brush to get into that crevice in the leg there. I think that it's okay if by the end of this we need to do a little bit of additional panel lining, but I want to avoid having to do too much in that regard. I am definitely seeing what Ninjon said about the dry brushes being so much better at picking up raised details than the airbrush is. This is I'm trying to use a really light touch here. Shouldn't be having to really press with the dry brushes to get the paint off. And that's where diluting the paint just a little bit and keeping it fairly damp even on your supposedly dry brush really can help. Yeah, at this point I've got enough color down that I think that I can do some more traditional dry brushing motions here, and I'm going to use slightly thicker paint, less diluted here, because I want more of it to be depositing, and I want to build a little bit more contrast. Now I guess the question is, these are good results. How fast are they compared to everything else? Because we've been at this for what, probably 15 minutes at least now? Is that good enough? Maybe on my second pass, when I actually get some highlights going, we'll be able to answer that question. Now we're going to bring in some of that pastel blue as our highlight color. And actually, I'm going to add just a tad bit of this bright jade as well to keep the vibrance up. I've found that dry brushing, it can kind of lose a little bit of vibrance, so this should help. So that's our little mix of those colors here for our highlight color. This we want a little bit more of the traditional dry brush consistency. And this time I'm going to just really focus on raised details and sort of the top portions of things. I actually want to thin that down just a tiny little bit. May have been too much. very gentle here. That's giving us a very kind of shiny blue. Look at that. Very interesting. Very interesting results here. Pick up those sort of oval shapes pretty well. There's a billion of those things all over Eldar armor. It can make it very annoying to paint sometimes. I don't want to cover over that mid blue that I have too much, or else it's going to lighten it to the point that it no longer really looks like that royal blue. And that's not what we want. We just want that definition. Okay, that's not bad. It did end up sort of made it a little bit brighter blue than I had wanted. That's okay. Might be able to knock that down just a little bit. Coming back in with the original royal blue. Especially on these knee pads here. That's looking good. Get it on the kind of undersides of the arm. Yeah, that's good. That's what we're looking for. Sort of tempering that super bright highlight color. That's great. Yeah, what I like about this whole process is we got great definition, especially on the back here. Where there's all those raised edges that really took the dry brushing super well. Alright, that's pretty good. It took about 20 minutes, but got us most of the way there. So that's our initial shading step. Now I think before we go too far with any more shading or detail work here, it would probably behoove us, that's a good fun word, behoove. I think it would probably be a good idea to start getting some base coats down, especially on things like the guns, which I want to be black. And that way, if we make any mistakes while doing our base coats, which does happen sometimes, we don't have a ton of work already invested that we'll have to fix. So let's get this done. Now, when I was doing the airbrushing here, I should have done more on the gun. I sort of forgot that we were doing an all-over sort of slap chop deal. So it would have been better if I could have just hit the gun with a little bit of thinned down black and had that shading underneath it, but it is what it is. Same with the hand here, didn't really get much, so that would be a little bit of manual highlighting that I'll have to do later. I think that this step right here, doing base coats, is one of the absolute worst steps, which is where something like slap chopping or the various adjacent sort of undercoating techniques really come in handy, because they basically combine the step of base coating with shading. Really careful not to get black into places that I don't want it to be. I almost like instinctively just went to shut my camera off, because if I were filming a video, this would be something that I wouldn't really show on camera because it's so incredibly boring. So, sorry. Go listen to some music during this step or something. Although there is one little interesting thing that I want to show here, is I have a bunch of old synthetic brushes that I keep around, and they always inevitably, their bristles, they curl like that. And yeah, that's not good for detail painting, but it can be incredibly useful for getting into hard to reach places, such as in here. Getting that little bit of gun without touching the chest is a real challenge. I am shocked that they didn't do an update of the Dire Avengers with the last Eldar release. I am really surprised by how old these kits are. Okay, that gun's good. Let's do this one. So one of the reasons that I have always kind of favored the standard like base coat wash highlight method, even with the advent of things like slap chop and airbrushes and contrast paints and all of that, is that I find this method to be the easiest to just like lay down base coats, lay down base color neatly, because I don't have to be super careful during this step anymore. I can be a little bit messy with applying this black, because if I accidentally get any of that black onto any of the other surfaces here, guess what? I don't care. It's just a base coat. It's not a finished surface. There's no gradients, there's no nothing. All I gotta do is just come back in with some of that pure royal blue and paint over it, and that's it. Who cares about mistakes? So I'm gonna be a little loose with it here. Hell, you might not even want to come in and fix anything with the base coat, because on a lot of areas of the model, you're just going to cover it with subsequent layers. So why even bother? No such thing as a mistake. See, that was messy. I got black there. I'll try and wipe it off, but if I can't get all of it, who cares? it's good that it doesn't appear that my phone, which I'm currently using as my webcam here, is not overheating. That was something that I would be worried about for such a long stream. I mean, I guess it's only been about an hour and a half, but we'll see how it holds up over the long run. Made a little mistake there. I wasn't being careful enough. I forgot that this wasn't just the straight up base coat one. The reason it's going to be difficult to fix that mistake is because we did all that airbrushing. I have absolutely no idea what color I need to mix up to actually fix that, because it's not something that came straight out of the pot. Mistake there that I gotta try and wipe away. Yeah. Oh, got one there. Damn. Didn't catch that one in time. Got a little mark on his knee there. If anyone out there has a better method of doing this, let me know, please. I hate this. Just about good enough here. Got most of everything that anyone can see, which is really all that matters. good enough. Although I realized I didn't get the little hoses on this guy. Let's do that real quick. Yeah, it's something that I guess I just gotta suck it up and do it. No shortcuts there. I guess really the only thing to be done is just get better at being neat while doing it. Just, yep. This is one that I have to really actually be careful with because I did all that dry brushing. I probably should have done this before I did any of the dry brushing. That would have been smart. Nobody ever said I was smart, just that I'm good at painting. Oh, there's another place that'll need some highlights. It does seem like that one of the advantages of doing the dry brush route is that there's not a ton of overspill. I didn't really have to do all that much to base coat this this gun back up. That went really quite quick, so I'm happy about that actually. Now we're going to need to do some base coating for the white. And because it is typically inadvisable to do white directly over a very dark base, we shall have to layer up a little bit. So I'm going to start with my gray-green mix. So just a little dab of this green. I might actually use a different green. This one's very vibrant. I gotta grab this one. This refractive green. It's already quite gray straight out of the bottle, so. Where was that? Oh, here it is. That's perfect. Just a little tinting of that green is all that we need. So we'll start out with this guy again. Now I haven't quite decided what color I want the like horse mane plume on the helmet to be for these guys. I could model it after in some of the like high elves of Warhammer artwork. A lot of them have like feathered crests that are like white with black tips. I could do that, but then I'd need to figure out a way to differentiate the white of the helmet and the white of the plume, which isn't impossible. I think all it would take is a different shadow color. Like I've got my green undertones for the white helmet, and then I could do maybe some like tannish colors on the white plume, something a little bit warmer. I think that could work quite well.
few bubbles here. Hopefully they sort themselves out. Alright. One down.
Yeah, just differentiating the shadow colors between warm and cold probably would be enough. The other option is to really go bold with it, and I don't know, go red, or like a red and white mix, red and yellow. I haven't really been able to incorporate any yellows into anything I've painted yet, but I have noticed in some High Elves artwork that they do use yellow as an accent color. Unfortunately, because these are kind of old models, I don't know if you can see it. There are some like gaps that I just could not for the life of me fill. I used so much liquid green stuff. I'll just have to hide it with the painting. Really happy that they're trying to do more problem. Yeah, I am not super thrilled with the Age of Sigmar setting. I was never really too much of a fantasy fan, but you know, like I've played Vermintide, and I did like that kind of dark medieval kind of thing. But I do have to say, I think that the Age of Sigmar models are just so cool. They have so many like wild out there sculpts. I gotta get around to painting some of those someday. There we go. Infinity. Is that the company that makes Corvus Belli? That like sort of cyberpunk-y game? Infinity. Okay, Warcrow. I haven't really looked at them too much, no. I think that this, I don't know, there's something about, I'm not sure which one it is, maybe it's Infinity. Just that particular sci-fi aesthetic, I didn't like that much. But I haven't really looked too deep into it. There might be stuff in there that I would enjoy. You grab my attention. Oh, that's interesting. I do honestly love crunchy rule sets. That's one of the things about 40K that I'm like kind of upset about, is that they've lost so many of the kind of like flavorful rules that they used to have. I want them to bring back vehicle facings, like firing arcs on vehicle weapons, so you can only shoot at certain directions depending on where you've positioned yourself. Like that's so cool. Armor values. I even loved like little things where there were different initiative values for each of the units and stuff to determine who fights in what order. That was always super cool stuff. The fact that you could have like weapon skills and ballistic skills that let you hit on better than 2+, like it was really pretty awesome. Alrighty then. So this guy, obviously we don't need to do any base coating because the helmet and the shoulders are already white. So what I am going to do is I'm going to take that green-gray mix that I just made up, and I'm going to mix it up with a bunch of contrast medium to sort of make my own wash in that color. Yeah, GW is expensive, but honestly, you can find so much good secondhand stuff on eBay. Like, you can make it work. Or if you're only interested in painting and not actually playing, you know, pop by the store every month and try and get one of the free models. think I've almost got that at a good consistency. I think normally I might want it to be a little thinner. I am adding one more drop here. Because we're doing it only on one model, on such a small space, having it a little thicker isn't a problem because I can very easily just wipe off unwanted excess. And actually, look at that, it's already flowing pretty well. In fact, that might even be too weak. I want it to actually shade down towards the edges. They do something a little more precise here. You say $90 for a squad? Do you live in like Australia or something? Because it's definitely expensive, but I don't think it's 90 here. Just a little bit of staining going on here. That's exactly what we like to see. Bring a little more color and definition to these shadows. We can wipe it off here. Where we want it to stay very white. That's pretty much exactly what I want. Just that slight bit of greenish undertone in the shadows. Now for the other ones, I'm going to bring them to the next step up with a little bit of gray. I'm going to use this gray here. Bright warm gray. Love this stuff. Yeah, that's true. You can often find them discounted on like Amazon or some other sellers. They'll take it down to like 50 something. That's still pricey. That's why eBay rescues are a beautiful thing. If you're willing to, put a little work into stripping some paint, you get stuff for really, really quite cheap. So I'm going to start building up the white in these other guys, and I'm going to do that with just some really quick layering, which is something I am actually good at and I like to do. So I just want a little bit of that greenish undertone showing through. I mean, listen, it'll absolutely do something for your body if you just leave the cap off of the glue for a little bit too long. My instinct with these guys is to go crazy and put in all kinds of secondary reflections and stuff, but I don't have time for that. I have to restrain myself. Alright, and I'll come in with some off-white here. Pure off-white. Let's see where we can go with this guy. Maybe not pure off-white. That might be too big of a jump. We'll do some of that bright warm gray mixed with off-white.
I know I shouldn't be spending so much time on this helmet, but oh well. I'm having fun. And honestly, this is the one that I did the dry brushing on. I think I saved myself so much time dry brushing that, you know, I can take a little bit more time to build up some layers here. Give it that sort of shiny white finish that I'm looking for.
Ah, Dan is in chat. Hello, hello. My employer. Yeah, how you doing? Yeah, I'm working on these guys, testing out what is the fastest way to actually get them looking good. So this guy here, we did a little bit of dry brushing on the blue armor, and I was pretty happy with how that came out. This one, I haven't done a lot on yet. This one's going to be kind of a classic, just base coat wash highlight. We'll see how that one does. I attempted to do some dry brush highlighting on this one and kind of failed. So I think I'm going to end up putting just a layer of probably this contrast paint over it to try and give it some definition, and then do some additional highlights. And then this guy we're going to be basically trying to do like slap chop with. So you can see I did just kind of a overspray with the airbrush on. So we shall see how that turns out. I'm spending a little time just on this guy's helmet because I want to see if giving myself a little bit of wiggle room with regard to how long it takes to do the main body can give me enough time to do some more complex shading and highlighting on other parts of the model. Now I'm going to bring it up to pure white here. Or pure off-white, rather.
So all of that ended up being relatively quick, and yet it looks pretty good. Got some really nice shading on there. I think the last thing I want to do is bring in a little bit of blue with that off-white. For some sky reflections on this side. Maybe that's a little much.
Okay, that's great. Now I've foolishly locked myself into doing that level of shading on all of them. That is okay. So I think I might be going a little overboard on refining these guys, but hey, I'm having fun with it. Always taking things to kind of like the next level. That's really the kind of painting that I love doing. So hopefully, once I discover what my preferred painting method is for, you know, the rest of the model, that'll allow me to do a lot more of this.
more of this refinement. I'm loving how this like shiny white is coming out actually. So at least it's a good kind of discovery for methods that I'm going to use later on.
Like, I'll definitely be doing this on some of the other characters
At some point.
Yeah, there we go.
That's looking great. When adding a little bit more of that green in there, that gives it some nice color. Those nice environmental reflections.
Yeah, there we go. Now I want to kind of see what the comparison looks like between these two if I just do some kind of strategic highlights on this one that we've done kind of the slap choppy method on, to see if we can get somewhere close to that but even faster. Actually, it's looking like the answer is yes.
I've already got quite a bit of shading built in there. So if we just come up here, sort of kind of do that little secondary reflection here down the side of the helmet.
Oh, why did my phone go off? Okay, a little bit of technical difficulties on the stream right now. My charging cable could not keep up with the power usage of the phone as the webcam. So we now have a hard time limit on how long I can stream, basically, and it's about 3 hours. So why don't we all just take a lunch break? I'll charge my phone up again and then restart the stream maybe around 3 o'clock. I'll see you all in a bit. Now the question is, how do I pause my stream? I don't know. I guess I just have to end the stream. If you want to continue watching along, come back at around 3, and I will start a new one. Hopefully my phone will be charged by then.